I'm delighted to say that Alan Quinlan is standing by. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, Adrian. How are you?
Good, thank you very much. We spoke about last week about the uncontracted players at Munster, and there's been maybe a couple of developments on that front, including, and maybe most interestingly, Bernard Jackman now saying that he's hearing that CJ Stander has been heavily linked with Bordeaux. Have you heard anything about it, or how likely do you think that is?
No, I just heard what Bernard said himself, that he had heard that rumour that Bordeaux were trying to sign him. I've said this, in the last couple of weeks. It is really, I have to be careful what way you word this, because everybody outside of sport are have their own challenges around COVID. But I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but for sports people, running into the last few months of the contract can be tough going, particularly the guys who are a little bit older. I think CJ Stander will get a contract, whether it's with Ireland or with Bordeaux or with somebody, he's at that level. There's lots of players who have the uncertainty of will they get any sort of a contract going forward, provincial players. And we saw a number of provincial players at the end of last season struggling to secure a contract anywhere. So it's a very difficult time for them as regards their future. And where they going to end up playing. I think, it's obviously prompted by COVID, and the IRFU have needed some certainty around their financials to try and get the contracts tied down, particularly with the national players. So I think the last couple of weeks, those contract talks have started and they've progressed, and I'm sure some of them will progress more smoothly than others. But if Stander was to leave now, I think it'd be very, very disappointing. And
how much of a loss would he be to Munster, Quinny, if he were to go?
Yeah, he'd be huge. I think he's played 150 games for Munster now, and he's been every time he puts on the Munster jersey or the Irish jersey, that's why he's such a fan's favourite. He just seems to give everything, and there's so much energy and work rate in these performances, and effort level, and passion in what he's trying to do. So he would be a huge loss.
And come here, would they, given his age profile and the form and quality and all that stuff, would he be another player that they'd be willing to make an exception for Johnny Sexton in terms of playing for Ireland?
I'm not sure. I think all those that suggestion and option is maybe something that's on the table now, that if the IRFU can't agree with contracts with some of the top players and some of them move abroad, I think it's certainly something that will have to be looked at, particularly if they're struggling financially. And it may be something that the RFU might have to do in this contract window, if you like, that if they let some of these guys go and are playing abroad, obviously they've less management in them and control over them as regards the amount of games they play. But financially, it would be huge money off their books. But I'm sure they don't want that either, and I hope to see most of the players re-sign, and if that happens in the next few weeks. But it's in the lap of the gods at the moment, Adrian. Nobody knows what will happen here. And CJ's 31 now, recently 31, I think, and it's hard for players if they get a big offer. They've got to consider it as well, but he's got to weigh up then the Munster situation. He's very, very, very attached to Munster and living in Limerick, and playing for Ireland as well. And so who knows? I'd be really sad if he was to go, but again, it's only speculation. It's only rumours, and these rumours happen all the time when players' contracts are up.
Yeah, but that happened 3 years ago when he was linked with Montpellier, and then when he signed the contract, he came out and said unfounded media reports, which can be obviously helpful in the context of things. But as you say, the landscape has changed enormously. Like if they went down that route of having to make exceptions, and as you say, it might be the thing that makes most business sense to them now, given the state of finances generally. It's a hard one to put back in the bottle again.
It is, yeah, and that's just that may not happen. Of course, there's financial worry and concern with the RFU and all the rugby unions. They can't keep going. This is another window of no crowds, and the finances that are generated from that. I really thought at this stage we may have some crowds back. There was I was hopeful last year when it all happened that maybe in November we might see some crowds. So we're going to go into another Six Nations now, another international window, if you like, of matches with no crowd. So it's the financial burden is going to continue for another while. The CVC money and that deal is nearly tied up. So I think that will give a cash injection into all the different unions. So maybe that will stave off the major problems from at the moment. But whatever way they look back in this, all the rugby unions and sport right across the board and businesses for sure will have lost a huge amount of money. And can they sustain that going forward?
Alan, I just wanted to chat to you about our depth chart, which we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. We concluded it yesterday with the back three. Niamh Briggs picked Hugo Keenan at fullback, Keith Earls on one wing, and Andrew Conway on the other wing as her starting back three. She had concerns over Jordan Larmour and Jacob Stockdale for different reasons. I guess defensively might be one of the main reasons for both. Would you have similar concerns in terms of starting either of those in the first Six Nations game against Wales?
Yeah, look, I think Conway hasn't played for a while, but his aerial ability is much better than both Stockdale and Larmour. And historically, and the way that we've seen the Six Nations the last couple of years, there's a lot more kicking. England have been very, very dominant, but they kick a huge amount as well. So if you pick Jordan Larmour on the wing and you play England in potentially a Grand Slam decider, this is hypothetical. Well, they're certainly going to try and target him. France are going to try and target him. He's such a talented player. I find it hard to leave Jordan Larmour off my team because I can understand what Niamh is talking about, but I just think we are crying out for a little bit of X factor, aren't we? Someone who can step, someone who can pop up and just do something brilliant. Someone who can counter attack when the ball is kicked in over their heads, that can pick it up and actually, have an ambition to run back and ability to beat players. I think he's had issues in the air, Jordan Larmour, and that's the problem, and he's just got to keep working on that. Is it something that you can coach into players? I don't know. I think some players are just really, really naturally good and aggressive in the air. And that's my biggest, Jacob Stockdale, again, he has so much positive about his attacking play, but it's the defensive work. It's the decision in the defensive line. It's not biting down when the ball is heading out towards his winger and just having that awareness defending and again the aerial game for such a big guy, and he should be a lot better in the air. So you're going for a much safer option in the air. And to be fair to Andrew Conway, his speed and his attack is brilliant as well. I just think Larmour, they all have really positive parts of their game. I think Larmour's overall attack and football ability is probably the best. Stockdale is such a finisher, and Conway's all-round game is probably better than both of theirs. So I can understand where she's going for, but I find it hard to leave Stockdale out of my team.
You mentioned there that it's near impossible to coach being good in the air, especially, I guess, at this point in those players' careers. Is there anything...
If it's a technical issue with the way they're jumping or jumping too soon or jumping too late, of course, there's technical parts of it that you can, body language, the way you turn your body, all that stuff. But you know yourself in any sport, that real determination, fight, that never say die attitude, that having no respect for your body type attitude is hard to coach that into people sometimes. And just look at how good Rob Kearney was for so long for Ireland. But then people kind of question his attack game and not hitting the line, scoring tries regularly. So do you go for that solid, safe, secure aerial player over an attack player? I don't know. I think Ireland are crying out for attack and tries and flair and so I think Jordan Larmour can get a lot better at that, but he's got to show it to us in some of these big games. It's not as if there's any sort of fear for any of these players going into the air. There is no fear here for them, but they've got to show more intent, more aggression, and a real kind of attitude when they get up into the air and contest balls, ones they're receiving and ones that they're kicked downfield. So it is something that, desire is hard to coach on. You don't coach desire. You can talk to people about it. You can try and find ways to ignite that desire. Some guys are quite in the pitch and until they get a punch in the head, and then it's a different player you're getting, So it's just, if somebody concedes a try, if one of those wingers miss a tackle and concede a try, that fight and desire just ignites a little bit. And you've got to see that from the start of games, particularly with the importance of the kicking game and what we're going to expect in the Six Nations.
Just on the players' contracts, Quinny and Ulster signing Leone Nakarawa in the last few days, and just looking at a 32-year-old, he signed a 1-year deal. I don't know how much money's involved, but is it reasonable to say that that's like bad business almost on his part, given his age profile, and very good business for Ulster?
Yeah, look, it's probably sometimes these cycles and windows are hard to get. Ulster may have earmarked someone for the following season to come in on a 2 or 3 year contract, and that's sometimes the way these things work. Given when you sign a player for a year, I think 3 years ago, he was world class. He was having huge moments in games and a massive effect in performance. But since he came back from the World Cup and not turning up for Racing, coming back from the World Cup, effectively going missing, and fitness concerns, effort level, all that kind of stuff that I was talking about a minute ago. You never know what you're going to get with some of the Pacific Island players. When they get that stuff right and their fitness levels and their attitude, they can be so much better, and they can be world beaters. They can be game changers, and he has the potential to be a game changer in matches. He is 32, but Dan McFarland is taking a risk here. If the attitude of the player is right when he comes, and if he trains hard, and if he gets stuck in and gets really fit and gives that effort, well, then you may get a brilliant player for a year. But I suspect it's someone and that they've earmarked for after this year. So it's a good deal for him, because he's gone from Racing to back to Glasgow and now gone on to Ulster. So you don't want to finish up your career moving around like that from year to year, but it's probably a chance for him to ignite his career again and get a few more years out of it.
Yeah, Andy Friend, another one who's got a couple of more years out of it, signed a new contract at Connacht. Everybody seems pretty pleased with all of that. Give him a rating out of 10, Quinny. It's 3 years, almost 3 years in charge so far, and what he's achieved and how he's moved the province along. What's your sense of where he's at out of 10, let's say?
I think he's done a fantastic job. I think obviously there's been periods where they've had bad spells, and they're going through a tricky period at the moment. But I just love the way Connacht play, and I love the style and the approach and his attitude, and I think he's been brilliant for Irish rugby. And you constantly hear the Connacht players talking about the environment that they have, the feel-good factor, the buzz in the camp, and they've still got they're always going to have challenges, Connacht, and they're trying to bridge the gap with the other provinces and attract more players and develop more players. He's brought a number of players from their academy and given them their debuts in Connacht. So he believes in these young players, and sometimes it's he's the hand he's dealt is a difficult one regarding budgets and stuff like that, and the ability to bring in big names and getting the sports ground developed. And I just think his attitude and that feel-good factor that he brings to Connacht rugby and Irish rugby is brilliant, and he's a really positive guy. So he knows he doesn't have the same resources as a Munster, Leinster, or even Ulster, and he doesn't complain about it. And I love his attitude. So I think he's done a brilliant job, and developed a lot of good young players. And I think they're in a bit of a transition with a lot of these young players. Some of them will kick on and get to the next level. But I really like Andy Friend, and I think his approach to the game is fantastic to see.
Are you refusing to be drawn into a player rating out of 10?
Oh, player rating. Oh, a player rating or a coach rating?
Well, a coach rating, yeah.
Well, I it's hard to kind of at what level, at European level, at Pro 14 level,
the whole package,
and the mitigation of the challenges they have and budgets and stuff like that. I think he's a 7 or 8 out of 10 easily. I think particularly in the approach and the attitude to the way the game is played. I love the way Connacht play, and back when I played them, many years ago, I think Connacht were quite direct in their approach. We've seen a real shift in the way they play the game, and teams look at Connacht now in their attack. Their attack is fantastic, and so I'd say it's hard to give a guy a 9 or go any higher than 8 when it's about winning trophies. But given the challenges and the mitigating factors and budget wise and all that kind of stuff, he has to pick up players from other provinces who don't get contracts there. And we've seen a number of, that at the start of this season with some of the Munster players going there, Wooden, Sammy Arnold, Conor Oliver and stuff like that. And he gives players a chance, and he's to deal that way with it. So I think a 7 or 8 out of 10. I love his attitude, and he's such a positive guy. And you'd love to play under a coach like that. You can see that kind of players love it.
Yeah, interesting fella. All right, we'll have plenty of Six Nations to chat to you about next week. Quinny, enjoy the weekend.
Cheers. Thanks, lads.